Picture a bad person. When you hear about an atrocity or a violent crime, you naturally assume the person responsible looks or feels different. You imagine a monster, not an ordinary neighbor. It is deeply comforting to believe that people who do terrible things are born broken or missing a vital piece of their humanity. If they are entirely separate from us, then we are safe. Criminologists and neuroscientists have spent decades studying this exact assumption, and they have arrived at the same unsettling conclusion. There is no exclusive genetic club for bad people. This diagram illustrates how evil actually operates, as a sliding psychological spectrum. By blending the markers of us and them, the science shows that every single human being, including you, exists somewhere on this line. Acknowledging that shared capacity is deeply uncomfortable. Yet understanding exactly how the mechanics of darkness operate is the only practical way to ensure you never cross that line yourself. For centuries, scientists have argued over whether criminals are born or made. The debate usually pits raw biology against the childhood environment. To find a definitive answer, neuroscientist James Fallon spent years analyzing the brain scans of severe psychopaths and violent serial killers. Fallon noticed a distinct biological pattern. These highly dangerous individuals shared a severe lack of activity in the orbital cortex, the brain area responsible for empathy. One afternoon, reviewing a disturbing scan with zero activity, he checked the metadata and saw his own name. Fallon is a successful scientist. He is a husband and a caring father. He grew up in a stable, loving, and supportive family environment. Because of that stability, his dangerous underlying neurology was never activated. The scientific consensus is clear. Genetics load the gun. The environment pulls the trigger. Without the right situational pressure, the darkest biology remains completely dormant. Your brain has a rational layer called the neocortex, which usually keeps your primitive survival instincts in check. Under extreme stress, intense fear, or heavy group pressure, that rational layer shuts down. The primitive survival brain takes over, overriding your standard morality. History shows us exactly what that biological override looks like. In 1971, researchers set up a mock prison in the basement of Stanford University. They recruited 24 psychologically healthy college students and randomly assigned them to be either guards or prisoners. Within 2 days, the students acting as guards began psychologically torturing the prisoners. Nobody instructed them to do this. A uniform, a title, and unchecked power caused healthy young men to rapidly devolve into abusers. 10 years before that experiment, philosopher Hannah Arendt traveled to Jerusalem to cover the trial of Adolf Eichmann, the senior Nazi official who coordinated the transport of millions of people to concentration camps. Arendt expected to see a raging monster in the glass booth. Instead, she found a boring, efficient bureaucrat. Eichmann was a man doing his job, following the rules of his system and trying to advance his career. Arendt coined a specific phrase for this: the banality of evil. The greatest horrors in human history are largely committed by ordinary people who simply stop thinking independently and start following orders. Researchers have identified 5 specific psychological conditions capable of breaking down normal human morality. When these triggers are present, anyone can be corrupted. The first is authority. In 1961, psychologist Stanley Milgram found that 65% of participants would deliver fatal electric shocks to a stranger, entirely because a calm man in a lab coat instructed them to continue. We are instinctively wired to obey legitimate power. The second is dehumanization. Propaganda regularly labels target groups as insects or vermin. Neurological scans reveal what this language actually accomplishes. It literally turns off the brain's empathy circuits toward that specific group. The third is gradual escalation. People rarely cross major moral lines all at once. They make a tiny, justifiable compromise, then another. This foot-in-the-door technique slowly shifts a person's baseline until the unthinkable becomes routine. The fourth is group dynamics. Humans have a primal fear of social rejection. When an entire group acts a certain way, the individual conscience is rapidly overridden by the safety of conformity. The fifth is anonymity. When a person's identity is hidden, whether by a physical mask in a mob or a screen name in online trolling, the illusion of zero accountability causes a massive, immediate spike in aggression. Looking at these forces, Philip Zimbardo, the architect of the Stanford Prison Experiment, reached a stark conclusion. We spend too much time worrying about a few bad apples and ignore the fact that a bad barrel will rot any apple you put inside it. You navigate these same pressures of authority, conformity, and anonymity every day in your office and on your phone. History simply illustrates what happens when they go unchecked. The participants in Zimbardo's basement and Milgram's lab were psychologically healthy people who entered the room convinced of their own moral strength. That confidence provided no protection once the situation changed. If anything, the belief that they were above such behavior left them blind to the forces that eventually overwhelmed them. Hannah Arendt proved that evil thrives in the absolute absence of thought. Therefore, your only proven armor is active, deliberate awareness. Researchers point to 3 specific habits that protect against situational corruption. First, practice extreme perspective taking by actively putting yourself in the victim's shoes. Second, pre-commit to your moral values now, because deciding your boundaries under pressure rarely works. Third, relentlessly question the legitimacy of the orders you receive. Safety comes from acknowledging your own vulnerability to these darker impulses. That specific recognition provides the mental friction necessary to stay watchful. Take a look at those 5 conditions again. Tell me in the comments which one makes you the most uncomfortable. Feeling that discomfort is the first sign of waking up. In episode 2, we are looking at the psychology of serial killers, exploring the science that forces us to question what a monster actually is. See you there.